Hello.
Hello, good morning. Afternoon.
It's not the morning. Yeah. Good afternoon.
What time is it even?
It's 3:45. So,
I'm
it's quarantine hours though. So
I'm drinking coffee though, so it's morning.
That's right.
It's morning for me.
Every time is all the times. The same. How are you doing?
I'm okay. My spring break is over.
Yeah. What a spring break it was.
I played a lot of Animal Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
Also N64 games.
Yeah, a couple, yeah. We didn't play
Pokemon
too
Snap.
much, but yeah.
You played Mario Golf, Ogre Battle.
Played a little bit of Ogre Battle. Mostly Mario Golf though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to play more. For sure. What else is going on? Anything? This is like, I think the 4th episode we've done in quarantine.
Yeah, I don't know. Really? That's a month?
Yeah.
A month.
Because I've been making videos for work for 3 weeks, and there was a week before that where we were in quarantine, but I wasn't making them yet.
That is true.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
Fun.
It's going kind of weirdly fast.
Yeah.
There's no obvious end point, so who knows? Anything else going on? What? Twitch is going good, and
yeah. I don't know. I haven't done anything except for stream and we have a community day coming up with Pickett.
yeah, a week from yesterday. I thought it was yesterday for a while, but learned that it was not.
Because it's still the brilliant event right now.
And I think our plan is to do some streaming and
12:01 a.m.
Good times
on Saturday.
Good times, great oldies. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything exciting, I don't think.
No, there's not as much to talk about before our episodes anymore.
We went on a walk.
The week's going by.
I instantly saw a squirrel.
You did. I was
and
there.
A big dog.
It was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you want to get into it then?
Sure, let's go.
All right, one's ready. Turn to page 227, The Very Secret Diary. Today's lesson is called Telling History. A synopsis. The chapter begins with Hermione recovering from accidentally transforming into a cat. All students return from winter break, and suspicion around Harry persists despite no new attacks. Ron and Harry respond to a screaming Myrtle and discover that someone has thrown away a 50-year-old diary belonging to T.M. Riddle, a name that Ron remembers from a special trophy at Hogwarts. Harry keeps the diary despite its being blank, and eventually he and Hermione speculate that it may be relevant to the last time the Chamber of Secrets was open. Meanwhile, Lockhart introduces Valentine's Day delivering dwarves, one of whom tackles Harry in the hallway and sings a musical Valentine message to him. Ginny seems especially mortified, as in the melee, Malfoy steals the diary temporarily from Harry. Afterward, Harry recognizes that spilled ink covered most of his books, but not the diary. He decides to write in it, and is stunned when it responds to him. In a conversation with Tom Marvolo Riddle, Harry learns that he resolved the previous opening of the Chamber of Secrets, and is invited by Tom to see his memory. Harry agrees and is pulled into the diary to watch as Riddle confronts Hagrid, who releases a giant spider that escapes. Harry is thrown back from the memory and reveals to Ron that their friend Hagrid opened the chamber 50 years ago.
Yeah, I looked back because I forgot one thing I was going to do was look up dwarf in Fantastic Beasts.
I looked up dwarf.
Oh, you did?
No, in Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah,
not
I
in
did not.
Fantastic Beasts. Where, do we have the book?
Yeah, the red one.
Oh, dear.
Here,
why don't you do
I
it?
can get it. Yeah.
I'm guessing that there's not going to be an entry in there, because would it be transposed onto Pottermore /
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Pottermore does not have the entirety of Fantastic Beasts on here.
But it's also not a creature, right? Maybe because it's humanoid? Oh, those are all the dragons?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, it's not in here. Although that does make sense that I think that's in the forward of what's in here, what's not in here.
Because they're humanoid.
But
so Goblin
wouldn't
isn't in
werewolves
there
be
and stuff,
there,
right?
TUVW. Werewolf is in here. I don't know.
Interesting.
Well, yeah.
All I found was that there are only 2 references, apparently, to them in the books. This one, and then at some point Harry spots a few raucous dwarves in the leaky cauldron in Diagon Alley, which I think will be the next book, but I'm not positive about that. I think, I looked it up because I have an affinity for dwarves. I tend to play them in my games for a very long time. I don't, who knows why? I don't know. I just like them. And I was curious, like, I didn't really remember them in my previous readings, like, to now.
Yeah.
I didn't really remember, because it's not even like a scene in and of itself. It's like a little embedded thing that they're like these dwarves doing Lockhart, Valentine's stuff.
Oh my God, Lockhart, calm down,
So
dude.
that was all I found.
Stop making it about you. Oh my God.
Well, he sealed it, so we're fine.
Least favorite teacher.
Problem solved.
Until we get to the pink lady herself. Why are there candles in the bathroom?
Yeah,
because
there's no electricity.
It was just like a small detail. So like Filch is mad again because he has to clean up some water, and then Ron and Harry are like, oh, let's go into the bathroom. We hear Myrtle, and it's dark because the candles are out, and I was like, wait, why are the candles lighting the bathroom?
There would have to be them. Unless you just pee all over yourself. I
I don't know. Well, funny enough, so, because I looked up Chamber of Secrets on Pottermore, but I'm not going to get into it just yet because
sure, we can save it
for later. But in the little tidbit written by J.K. Rowling on Pottermore, there's like the fact that wizards they adopted plumbing from muggles, that they used to just relieve themselves and then like make it
vanish
disappear.
It away.
With magic, and so that's something.
Interesting choice.
Why?
Yeah, no, I'm not really sure.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
That's an odd one.
Because like wizards, why it doesn't make sense to me is actually no, because now I'm thinking about like the structuring of a society. So witches and wizards weren't always like sealed off from the muggle world. Like they existed,
right.
Like you're born into the world. We all share the same world,
right?
But then I'm thinking also about like, Hogwarts was founded, so like there's like stages of this society. I mean, it's still like, it's not like they're a completely different species, but you're still human. But I don't know, that's a different train of thought. But my question is like, well, why would you do that? Like, I'm
really not sure. Do you think they call plumbers muggle plumbers when they have issues?
Although I guess like with the development of plumbing, I guess that's also something to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I looked up was, can ghosts not die? That was the thing that you brought up with Nearly Headless Nick with his Death Day party. So there is writing by J.K. Rowling on Pottermore entitled Ghosts. So a ghost is a transparent three-dimensional imprint of a deceased witch or wizard that continues to exist in the mortal world. Muggles can't come back as ghosts. And she writes, the wisest witches and wizards choose not to. So it's those who have unfinished business, whether in the form of fear, guilt, regrets, or overt attachment to the material world, who refuse to move on to the next dimension. So obviously, Myrtle has some issues. Nearly Headless Nick has some baggage. But she also like writes in there that ghosts can't really answer the question about what it means to die because they haven't fully done it yet. So they're like trapped in this weird existence. She calls it an impoverished version of life.
But they're not. Does she comment on whether they're able to exit that version?
It doesn't seem like it. It seems that
it's
they
permanent.
have unfinished business and they refuse to move on to the next dimension. That's why they're a ghost. But I guess it's not clear whether or not like you can finish your business
or something like that, right?
Ghosts can pass through solid objects without causing damage to themselves or the material, but they create disturbances in water, fire, and air. That's all. That's all about ghosts.
Yeah, I've always wondered that about ghosts in like my games and my fantasy stuff of like, what is sort of the ontological side of it? Are they able to exit it, and resolve their issue? And if so, how,
Yeah, I guess I didn't go through the Reddit threads though. I'm sure people have discussed this.
Well, we know some of
probably
some of the ghosts in Hogwarts have been there for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, but this goes back to the question of whether bins will always be
always
the history of magic
permanent
teacher forever.
Hey, save some money. It's not like he needs to get paid.
Yeah, sure. Free labor. Another thing that's somewhat related and somewhat surprising to me, talking about somebody who's very old. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go into the diary, so we're jumping around, but that's fine. We usually do. We go into the diary, and one of the scenes with Tom Riddle is he's in the headmaster's office with Armando Dippet.
Yep, Dippet.
The prior Hogwarts headmaster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he lived to be, I'm doing some calculation, 355 years old.
What?
He was born, according to this,
Wait.
in 1637.
What?
Yep. I know. I don't know if that's right, but that's what it would say on the thing. I guess so, yeah.
Oh, spoiler alert, sorry.
So he was headmaster in the 1940s into the 1960s and possibly into the early 1970s. Somewhere between March 1965 and March 1971 was when Albus Dumbledore became headmaster at Hogwarts. Mm-hmm. He died in 1992. Armando Dippet.
Yeah, okay, so that's this year. Well, actually last year, because we're in 93 right now.
Okay.
For, after winter break, it's January 93, February 93.
Yeah, no, I guess it is, because
no.
Valentine's Day 1993, so it would have been the prior year.
Yeah,
but it would have been this.
What I was trying to figure out was like the 50 years prior. Oh my gosh, I went down all of these like timeline holes that led me. So I went back to like the 40s because the diary was written 50 years, or it was owned. Chamber of Secrets. All of this was 50 years ago. So that takes us back to 1943, and then I was like, wait a second. What about Grindelwald? When was he defeated? And so I went through this whole thing. I didn't really get anywhere, but I was just like exploring a bunch, because then I was like, well, I was trying to think about contextually. So it's kind of strange because I always forget about the connection, or not connection necessarily, but like the crossing of paths between Tom Riddle, Lord Voldemort, and Grindelwald. Like, because, so what I found out or clarified was that in 1945, that was when Grindelwald and Dumbledore had their famous duel and all of that. But that was like 2 years after this diary thing and the Chamber of Secrets. So I was just trying to think about the timing of this.
Because that means that in the upcoming movies, they could actually play this out if they chose to.
Yeah. I'm like, I got super hyped. I was like, oh,
we could see an alive Myrtle.
Goodness. Do you think they'll bring her back? She'll be like much older.
Well, she was like in her 40s when she was moaning Myrtle in the first place. So
yeah.
It is kind of fun to remember how much the timeline crosses each other with the current movies, the Fantastic Beasts movies, and these Harry Potter stories. Yeah. The past of the Harry Potter stories, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of commentary about Grindelwald and comparisons to Hitler and World War II specifically. But then, I always forget, oh, yeah, Tom Riddle was a child or, teenager when all of this was also happening.
Yep.
So it's interesting to think about generationally, because I don't know, people always are like, oh, Voldemort's the big bad, but remembering he was also a kid who grew up. And so thinking about those contextual historical political pieces that are part of the larger world is interesting to also think about.
It would be very interesting to hear Voldemort's perspective on Grindelwald. What he thinks about Grindelwald and what Grindelwald tried to do with I mean, it just would be what was he thinking about, because we know that in this timeline, this time frame, Voldemort is recruiting and has strategies and stuff, you know.
If he's oh, I could do better, I could be the leader, or I could rule them all. Oh my gosh.
But it's I think, to me at least, the way that I read the two characters, it speaks to that they're quite different. I don't think Voldemort would ever align with Grindelwald, and vice versa. They're not really aligned with each other. They are chaotic, both of them, but they're not the same type of evil.
Yeah. I mean, so I got to the point where I was basically, what I found was I think it must have been like a timeline of Grindelwald specifically, because that's when I got to the point of like, oh, well, he was defeated in 1945 and then he died in 1998. And so like, I don't know, just like the context of all of that, it made me wonder about the similarities, but also differences between the two, which I think we could probably, if we watch Fantastic, I mean, I know that the movies are coming out slowly over a long extended period of time. I'm sure we could go in depth on
I think we should
characters.
at some point. I think it would be really fun to compare them.
Mm-hmm.
But in this chapter, at least, spoilers, meeting Tom Riddle, it's such a fantastic way. I mean, it's like...
It happens so fast.
It happens
all
so
of
fast,
this.
yeah.
Because it goes like this. It's like, TM Riddle, and Riddle's like, or Riddle, Harry is like, TM Riddle, and he's the one that's like, it's a diary, he's probably Muggleborn, blah, 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 and Ron comes in for the win, and he's like, hey, I know that name. I'm just like, Ron, what are you doing, bro? And so then it just like unfolds so fast. Like, I mean, I was halfway through the chapter, and I was like, this is called the super secret diary, when is it going to come into play? And then finally, like, I don't know, in the course of like a couple pages, I was like, whoa, slow down. What is happening?
Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is the only chapter really that Harry will have possession of the diary. I think in the next chapter is when he no longer has it. Yes, it does happen very fast. It's a relatively, again, it feels like a fairly long chapter in the sense that like it's a big moment. The diary is in Harry's hands. There's all these other things kind of happening, but they're all pretty peripheral. No attacks stands out, right? Especially in this read for me, like the way J.K. Rowling kind of talks about like this vacuum of attacks, and she fills it in with like people are still accusing Harry, and it's because they've accused Harry that he's no longer doing them because all the suspicion is on him and like all this stuff. When really like the reason is because of the diary. It's kind of fascinating, like how she does that.
So in encountering the diary, so Ron and Harry go in and like Myrtle's hysterical, and then they see it. So I love how Harry's just like about to pick it up, and Ron's like, that could be dangerous, and Harry's like,
yes,
what are you talking about? So
that brings me, you were going to talk about this probably because you mentioned to me the thing about the sonnets of the sorcerer or whatever, and I actually thought about that, like the three things that Ron lists. It occurred to me that it's possible that he's wrong.
That what's wrong?
What Ron is saying, like, oh, my dad told me about these like evil books that like you can't set it down and stuff. And I was thinking about like rumors in the wizarding world and how much they must be able to spiral, because you can essentially like really rational. I mean, look at how much people rationalize in the Muggle world about like it's kind of supernatural and different reasons for things happening.
Yeah.
Then if you actually had magic, you'd be like, oh, well, like, yes, there's a book that like if you read it you can never stop reading it.
So I didn't find the exact books for the ones that he describes like that, so like the book that you can't put down, and I don't remember what the other one was, but I couldn't find an actual one
that burst into flames.
Oh yeah, that make your eyes burn your eyes out or whatever. So I couldn't find the specific ones because I kept searching, and then I went down this other rabbit hole because like when the battle at the Department of Mysteries happened, like Arthur got promoted to a new position. So I was trying to find like, okay, well maybe Arthur like somehow like said the names of the books somewhere in the wizarding world, and I couldn't really find it. But it also made me laugh because for Ron also, like a book that you could never put down would probably be very torturous to him, in general.
Yes, and what I was thinking about was like, I wonder if he's like partially right or right about one of them and not the others, because there's another time where J.K. Rowling in this chapter juxtaposes that Ron lists things, and it's like about the diary and like what could happen, and like one of the things he lists is like killing Myrtle or something.
Yes,
like that.
I wrote that as my favorite quote, or I have several favorite quotes. So Harry's like, oh, I wonder why Riddle got the award, and Ron says, oh, it could have been anything. He could have gotten 3 OWLs, saved a teacher from a giant squid, maybe he myrtled Myrtle, like so casually, and I was just like, oh my god,
it's pretty great. And it was that thing because it was also, I think, a list of 3, right? And like so were the books, and I was like, oh, maybe one of the 3 is like real, you know.
So interestingly enough, so the book that he lists is a real book, But now you're making me think of like whether it's actually like a cursed thing or if it's a rumor. So this took me to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which I have decided I have to reread this because there's like, first of all, this takes place modern day, like in 2019, 2020. That's now. Like, what is happening? I'm convinced, I know that it's not popular and people are going to hate me for this, but I'm convinced that Cursed Child is like canon lore connected to Wizards Unite. So that's just why I'm caring about this. But anyway, one of the books that he mentions is Sonnets of a Sorcerer. So basically, if you read it, you're cursed to speak in Limerick for the rest of your life, which is a kind of strange curse, but whatever. It's the wizarding world. So there's this scene that's in the Ministry of Magic in Hermione's office because she's, I believe, headmaster at this point. And the kids are like...
Minister?
Yeah, what did I say?
Headmaster.
Oh, headmaster. Sorry. Minister, okay. Yeah. The kids are snooping around her office. And so it's Scorpius and Harry. And there's this comment of like, oh, have you seen the books on the shelves? They're banned books, cursed books. And then there's like a list. All the books from the restricted section and then some. Magic Most Evil, 15th Century Fiends, Sonnets of a Sorcerer. That's not even allowed in Hogwarts. So like what you're saying just makes me think of like,
that could be the true one.
Yeah, it could be the true one. It could be cursed, but it also could just have a bad reputation. It's just like banned. Because funny enough, like Harry Potter was banned in a lot of schools because of,
yes,
witchcraft. So yes. I don't know. It's really fascinating to think about like what's real and what's overblown.
Yeah, I hadn't ever really thought about it until, like, for whatever reason, when I was reading that list, I was like, oh, what if he's wrong? Because it's like that secondhand thing of like, oh, my dad says. Like, my dad says this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well. Oh, where did he hear it? Did he experience it?
Yeah. The second little oh my God that I had, so after the maybe he murdered Myrtle, I can't say that.
Murdered Myrtle.
Was actually Harry. And this is like in his head. I didn't write down the page number, but it says, and while Harry was sure he had never heard the name T.M. Riddle before, it still seemed to mean something to him, almost as though Riddle was a friend he had had when he was very small and had half forgotten. And I was just like, oh my God.
I know.
I can't believe
the
this.
breadcrumbs that she lays down are just like so astonishing in retrospect, right? With like hindsight, it's like...
It's just a single sentence.
Even if it's just I had a conversation with my mom about this actually, of like, how much do we think J.K. Rowling, like with these research stuff that we do in the background, like, is she filling it in and stuff? And I was kind of saying like, I kind of view it as she probably has ideas. I was viewing it as like an unfinished jigsaw puzzle, that like the books are a jigsaw puzzle, but instead of like being bordered with like flat edges, there are hooks. And so she hooks onto them and like builds out the backstory and all the histories and stuff. And I think this is one of them where it's like, does she already have the ideas of how the story is going to play out over the next 5 books? Or is this just like part of her instinct of like, they're clearly connected, but like even the language that she uses to me is so stark of like a friend he forgot and like when he was young and like a piece of him, and it's like, what the heck?
Yeah, so
it's just so good.
In the last interview that I looked at from the last episode, one of the kid reporters asked her something about like the ending of the book, or I don't remember, like if she had already planned it out or she feels like she had to change it or whatever. And basically she said that she always had like she always knew where she was going to end up, and like she basically committed herself to that because that was like the commitment, like this is the story, this is like what
that's
I want
my
to
process
say.
Right now. And a lot of the feedback that I hear or like guidance that I hear is similar to that. It's like, you should spend the most amount of time at the beginning on the endings. Yeah. Because they're the hardest part.
Yeah. And so she said also that like the more books that like with each book, like her storytelling becomes it's forced to become tighter because she's trying to get to that endpoint she committed to. However, in the earlier books, she said that she often wandered a lot more, and she commented specifically that Hermione is one who wanders a lot, and that she's had to like pull it in like later books of just
interesting.
So I was imagining of like, so then another sentence that also is, because we've been talking about the one-off sentences about Ginny, and so one sentence is, so the Valentine's Day scene, everything is aggressive, like you have the dwarves pinning down Harry, like, I have to sing this to you, like, right now. This is my job. I don't know. And then the sentence is, Ginny was staring from the diary to Harry, looking terrified. That's literally all it says. Like, there's no going back to Ginny. That is the sentence.
Yep.
So I was thinking...
She's so intentional with that.
Yeah. I was thinking about the context of this book. So, like, if I had to... I mean, I don't write books, but if I were to do this, like, I would have an outline, and then I would have the key things and be like, oh... So, for example, Ron cleaning the trophies, like that is an intentional thing. Like that would be a sticky note that I would place somehow. Like, why would, like, Ron would be the messenger or the person to help like put this together. Like, why would he be doing this? Oh, because they got detention or whatever, and this was the punishment. And so that's what I was thinking about, is like these little things that are like, you have these key things and you're kind of dispersing it throughout the context of these chapters.
That's right. There's really only two anchors to it all. If I'm to talk about this book, one is the Chamber of Secrets. Mm-hmm. What is it? And the second is Voldemort. Mm-hmm. Like, who is Voldemort and what is his past? Mm-hmm. And then like tying those two things together and having this option to then play it out, and like, oh, how would you propose to like really share the past? Oh, have it be memories and like a diary, and like kind of play it out that way.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it.
And then weaving Hagrid in there is just
right.
Like, oh, in the heart.
Well,
Hagrid.
I think what's so compelling about it is that it's not, okay, so basically like living in real life is not linear. Like you meet a new person. It's not like you find out the history of who they are from like when they were born to like now. You find these like little pieces, and then as a human, because you process information and make sense of it, like you put them together. So sometimes like you might like craft an image or perception of a person because of like the little tidbits that you have about them, and perhaps your own like lived experiences and like how that shapes your lens. And so it's very interesting to think about, like when I think about complex storytelling, that kind of like this is really compelling because it's like, these are real people. Like you're just being introduced to them in these like little fragmented ways to paint these images, and like there's history, and it must have been so hard to keep track of everything. Yeah. I mean, except to like create it in your mind and be like, yeah, these are real people. I don't know.
Right. Yes. That's where I struggle the most as a budding writer, because I don't have a great memory. So like you have to be really organized. Like when I listen to George R.R. Martin speak, he like remembers so much about everything, including like the real world history, because he studies a lot of history. But anyway, yeah, I think Ginny it's a masterclass in writing a mystery, is following the clues of Ginny every time she comes up. And it's a masterclass too, because she's not the only one who comes up. Like Fred and George keep coming up, and it's like, well, so it feels like, oh, she's just telling us about ancillary characters until we find out later. And like there's the reveal, which is like the classic mystery of like the Scooby-Doo pull off the mask. Oh my God, like who's been opening the chamber? And then it's like, well, let me think back on what's going on. We have the benefit years later now of like knowing, so we can like read it in the moment as like, wow, look at this clue, look at this clue, look at this clue.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just great. I mean, this book is like, really, for me, this time around, I'm like, wow, this is great.
We were listening to that episode of Office Ladies, and I think it was Angela maybe who commented on a scene with Jim and Pam, and they were like giving each other a rundown of the day. It was like not a very monumental scene, but the way that Angela was talking about it was like, oh, it makes it so good, the show so good, because it makes it feel like you're eavesdropping, like it's not an actual scripted out scene or whatever. And so I think that similarly, even though there's like all this chaos that's happening, because that's kind of the painting of the picture, the Valentine's Day scene in particular, there's all this chaos happening. And so that's kind of what makes it beautiful, is that you have all this chaos, all this distraction, all this like all these things Malfoy. That you could look at. Yeah, of course, Malfoy is stealing the show, Lockhart stealing the show.
But even that is so beautiful because it's like the only other person now to touch the diary besides Harry and Ginny
Oh my gosh.
is Malfoy. And then later on, like there's just like ties in and like to put it in his hands and like give you the subliminal thing of like, oh, Malfoy with this diary, like books and blah, blah, blah. Like what's going on here? Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I think like there's a risk for me because I'm such a fanboy of misattributing, right? And being like, oh, this is like amazing. She planned all this when really like I'm reading into it, but
yeah,
that's fine. That's the beauty of reading. I think it's because like she does it with Neville too, right? It's like she talks about Neville every once in a while, especially in the first book. Like, here's Neville, here's Neville, here's Neville. And it always seems like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, you're like filling out the picture. And then he has like this pivotal moment of like standing up and then like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that this is also like, so I watched all of my first year of WizardPhD videos, like back to back. This was like at the end of year one, I was like, oh, so I was watching back all my videos, and something that stood out to me was that it felt like there was a common theme throughout the videos, or like intentionality there when there wasn't. Like, right. And so what it makes me think of is like, perhaps like this is just like, this is the world that she created. It came from inside of her. And so because of that, whether things are intentional or not, or like, it doesn't have to be like the carpenter version of like, right. I crafted this. It could be like the garden, like it's nurtured because it's inside of her. And so like, it's an extension of her as a person, like right. her values, her morals, or whatever coming out, even though it's in this like context. And yeah, so I don't know, that's also something that you're making me think of as you're speaking. It probably isn't like consciously intentional. It might be, parts of it might be, but it might just feel that way because it's something that's just, I don't know, part of her creative mind. I don't know.
Okay. On to the key moments. So let's talk for a little bit about the memory, the diary memory. Okay. So this is where I came up with the title, right? Telling history, because as somebody who's done a little bit of historical work in my research and publications, one of the styles of knowing history, and it's not an uncommon way, is like it's written by the victor, and also different things like that. But what stuck out to me here is that nothing that Tom Riddle shows Harry is a lie. Like, let's take that for granted. Okay, we could speculate off, like, yeah. Okay, yeah. But the whole idea of being able to, it's not even cherry picking. There's a danger in history because what exactly is going on in these scenes is so subtle.
Yeah.
Right. We get the benefit of finding out eventually, like, how we're being misled to come to the wrong conclusion about the Chamber of Secrets. The irony is, of course, that the school itself and all of history also came to the wrong conclusion. So for 50 years, T.M. Riddle has gotten special services for saving and closing the Chamber of Secrets. And like, that is the story, that it's reinforced by all this, by everything. And there's only one person, apparently we'll find out, who is suspicious of this conclusion, right? And it ties in so nicely because we get that one moment where Tom Riddle crosses paths with 50-year younger Dumbledore, and Harry recognizes in Dumbledore kind of the same sort of like suspicion of like, I can see through you. All what you're saying to me, Tom Riddle, Harry Potter, isn't all that's happening. And like, it's so great. I mean, to see it all play out again, and like the way that she does it, and like you empathize with Tom. I empathize with Tom Riddle at this point because it's like, oh, he doesn't want to go home. Like he's in an orphanage and he hates it. And it's like, he's Harry. And it's like, Harry doesn't want to go home.
That is oh my God. Yeah. I remember last time we did a video on this book, I pulled out this same quote again, but like, when he's talking to Dippet, Riddle is talking to Dippet, and he's like, oh, you have something to tell me or whatever. He doesn't say it that way, but Riddle's like, no. And it says, but Harry was sure it was the same sort of note that he himself had given Dumbledore. And so reading this chapter again, and I'm going to go connect to Wizards Unite because I already said this to you earlier. This is exactly the thing of the mirroring, the empathizing, the connecting that makes Constance Pickering so suspicious in this game. Because I'm like, I finished reading the chapter. I walked up to Jeff and I was like, Constance is Lord Voldemort. And that's all I said. I was just like, that is my conclusion.
Yeah, you
That
did.
is it. No, but it's really well done. Just the connection between what we're seeing with Tom Riddle, with Harry, and also like knowing Harry is being pulled into this memory and seeing this, like, of course, so going back to people's lenses and perspectives and previous experiences, that's also going to tint the way that Harry is viewing this. Like, he immediately is like, yeah, I'll trust you, Tom Riddle, even though you're talking to me through this diary, this kind of weird.
And even though you're trying to make me point the finger at Hagrid.
At Hagrid, your boy, who saved you.
And he does. Harry does. By the end of it, he has
it.
come out.
Yeah.
He has bit the bait.
Oh my gosh.
Seabass style.
It's Seabass.
Yeah, it's like, it's really phenomenal. I mean, the way that she sets us up and Harry up to have an emotional tie to Tom Riddle as a kid.
Yep.
Loving Hogwarts, wanted to stay there. Harry would stay there, like, and then like being able to manipulate that into even I was like, oh, it's Hagrid. Oh no.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, well, why did he like offer himself up?
Well, it's also similar, like, so if Tom Riddle is, because like Ron even was like, oh, it sounds like Percy or whatever, like he's head boy, prefect, like all this stuff, and he like,
and Hermione's like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, right. And supposedly Tom Riddle caught the heir Slytherin or whatever, did this stuff. It's like similar to Harry, where Harry wants to like be the one. He's on this journey as well. He's trying to like shut things down, and I don't know, it's kind of this very like disturbing, like, oh, he's kind of possibly someone to look up to, like this boy back in the day and whatever. But going back to what you're saying with the history thing, you made me think about, so Twitter, I think Facebook have similar policies now with like manipulated media, and so Twitter has this new tag thing, and this has become especially big with our political elections in the United States, and a big deal. Like, everyone keeps like talking about like what constitutes like edited video. Like, for example, like if you cut off like or like a little segment of a speech, like is it edited? Is it manipulated? No, it's literally what you said. But it's like, no, but you're like, editing basically is anything, or manipulation is anything that alters like what the intentionality of the message is within the context. Like, if you change the meaning that is made, then that is manipulation. Like, that's right. So that's kind of like what you made me think of with this. Like, yeah, you're literally seeing it. This actually happened, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Yes. I think if you shift the inference, that's what an editing looks like, right? You shift the inference. And so here, Tom Riddle shifts the inference for us to Hagrid the same way he did in real time.
Poor Hagrid.
Yeah. My gosh. Well, there's all these ramifications. I think the other side of the telling history idea that we kind of are flirting with when we talk about the cross between Fantastic Beasts and Grindelwald and Voldemort is Dumbledore, who, like himself, and we'll learn in these books, is possibly somebody who has told a certain history or allowed a certain history about himself to be told, right? And obscured other things. And so it's a different it's a challenging thing because we can't know the whole of history. So
Right, 'cause
we
you didn't
have
live
to
it,
have it be
and
condensed.
yeah.
But the inference drawing is the real question mark to me.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think people talk about with, like, that you can lie with history. It's like if you cherry pick certain things or edit or alter in certain ways, you can push people to make different inferences.
Yeah, and it's also complicated when you think of, like, so historical retellings of anything involve more than one person. So, like, from different perspectives, positionalities, and all of that, then, like, I don't know, it's kind of also when people are like, oh, everyone's a little bit right. Because, like, you know, we all do some things and torture each other and do whatever. And so
This is the bad place.
This is the bad place. So that's why it's so complicated.
Yeah. But another good chapter. Do you have anything else?
Too many things.
I
I was just like, oh my God, the whole time.
Yeah. So we're gonna start to wrap it up pretty quick. I
Oh,
saw the next chapter
one?
was
Cornelius
Fudge. I forgot about that as being.
I
a
also
chapter.
forgot about that.
But that'll be good. I'm excited for that. Maybe we'll do some research on the ministry or the Fudgeinator.
The Fudgeinator.
All right. Well, until next time then. Juan's ready.